Hello guys, welcome to the second of 3 special videos teaching you how to scratch with your DJ controller. You know, I want to open this one by saying thank you. Thank you for being one of the 3,736 people who watched that first video in this first few hours. By the way, if you're not one of those people yet, go and watch it now. It is a must-see video. And thank you for responding underneath the video. We had hundreds of you, literally hundreds of you, have taken the time to ask questions, to leave your comments, to tell us about your setup, tell us about your challenges when it comes to scratching. You've probably seen both Steve and myself in these comments, replying to you, getting stuck in. We stayed up late last night doing it, started very early this morning as well. It's been awesome. We're just really enjoying it. In this video, we're going to move it forward from the first video and show you how to set up your laptop, which is the most important bit, and how to set up your DJ controller and your software for scratching. There are tricks here, there is a knack to doing this, and if you don't get this right, you're not going to advance. This is really crucial stuff. Watch on for that. You're going to have to get this nailed before moving on to the third video, which is when things get really interesting. We're going to show you the big mistake that nearly every beginner scratch DJ makes. Make that mistake and you're not going to advance, you're not going to move past beginner, you're probably going to give up. It happens to 9 people out of 10. I want you to be one of those people, the 1 out of 10 who it doesn't happen to. You've got to see that. And once we've nailed that for you, we're going to show you real world scratch techniques that you can use instantly in any kind of music, from techno to wedding DJing. Don't believe me? Wait for video number 3, we're going to prove it. It's going to be awesome, it's going to be a great ride, but now I want to hand over to Steve.
Thanks, Phil. So before we move on to that, we just wanted to answer a couple of your questions, a couple of questions that caught my eye particularly. First one is from Charlie De Silva from Switzerland. Charlie says, "You're awesome guys." Thank you for that. And he says, "I learned more in 27 minutes than the hours I spent looking at scratch tutorials on YouTube." But here's the thing. He said, "I'm DJing Latin music but never had the courage to try scratching when mixing with Latin and reggaeton." So we're going to come on to that in a minute, Charlie. And also we had another question from Craig Frank de Tank Domingo. That's a brilliant name. We love that name. He's from Cape Town. And he said, "I've tried scratching on a Numark Mixtrack Pro, but I could never get it right. I've recently purchased a Numark N4. I've been using Virtual DJ 7 with both controllers. Is there a difference in software when it comes to scratching? Is Serato or Traktor better to scratch with?" Well, Craig, no matter what software you have, as long as it's set up properly, and you're going to learn all about that in this video, there's no reason why with Virtual DJ, as well as the other software, Serato or Traktor, you can't learn to scratch. They're all equally as capable, so don't worry about that anymore. And in fact, these 2 questions have inspired me to make a new demo. So I'm here, I'm going to use the Numark Mixtrack Pro, Virtual DJ. So that's going to help you out, Craig, and also I'm going to use a reggaeton Latin beat, so that's going to help you out, Charlie. So let's crack on with that now.
So first, your computer. The computer is the most important part by far in this whole equation. You know, your DJ controller, however nice it is basically a box of buttons, knobs and dials. All that does is become an extension of your computer. Or to put it another way, if your computer's working fine, if your computer's all tuned up properly, then you're gonna have no problems. But with the very best DJ controllers in the world, something wrong with your computer, no go. So it's only the same as when you buy a sports car. You know, a sports car comes tuned for the road, not tuned for the track. If you really want to use that sports car for the single purpose of getting around a track, high performance, best you can, you need to do a few things to it. It doesn't come from the factory set up for that purpose. And it's just the same with laptops. They don't come set up for DJing with, and especially for scratching with, because scratching is the most you can put a computer through. The number of things you're telling it to do in a very short space of time is quite high compared to just pressing buttons and doing all the boring normal stuff. So we need to make sure our computers are set up properly. The good news is you don't need the sports car version of a computer to do scratching with. From the very cheapest computer like this, like little $300 Acer here, up to the Retina Max and so on, you can get them all working properly. It's more a case of setting it up for the purpose at hand. And it's only the same here at Digital DJ Tips, where we do all these videos. In fact, I promised you a little bit of behind the scenes stuff, and you might have wondered why I've got a camera in my hand now. I thought it'd be fun to show you what our poor computers have to go through to make these videos. So I'm going to show you now. This is the main camera. This is the one that all the shots you see are filming me on. In the background there you can see desk number 2 in this studio. This is the kind of slightly wider angle camera, and up here when you see these really wide shots, this is the one that's doing it, right up there. Now across here in the main studio area, this is the camera that does all the overhead shots that you can see of DJ controllers and so on. And then further down here, past our main laptop, is the camera in here that does all those really tight close shots, like the one you saw in the last video of the tiny DJ controller. If you missed that one, by the way, go and watch it. It's really quite good fun. So all this stuff here, along with the pictures of the screen and the sound recorded from something like Traktor or Serato or whatever from that main computer, that all gets fed in. Give him a wave, Steve.
Hello.
There's Steve doing a bit of editing. That all gets fed into this iMac here, which has to do an awful lot of work. And in order for that to happen, we've had to apply some tweaks and tuning, just like you would to your laptop if you were using it for gaming, or if you were an architect using it for 3D modeling. You know, computers are made to do email, watch YouTube videos, and do all the day-to-day stuff. And in order to use it for scratching, you need to set it up right. So I hope I've set the point there. Now let's look at luckily, just half a dozen things that you need to get bang on in order to be able to say, it's not my tools that are causing me problems. You know, you've heard the old saying, a bad workman blames his tools. I don't want you to be blaming your tools if your scratching is going wrong. Or to put that one another way, I don't want you to think, is it me or is it my computer? I want you to know that your computer's running smoothly so you can spend your time rehearsing your skills and perfecting the things you're doing rather than worrying about the gear. So whether you're using a really cheap bog standard laptop or whether you've got an expensive one, pretty much everything I'm going to say now you need to get done. And the first big tip is when you buy your DJ controller, it's going to come with some CDs and a little instruction manual. If it doesn't tell you in the manual explicitly to do this anyway, and that is, do not trust the software on those CDs. That was probably boxed a year ago when that controller was made. And software, as you know from your operating system on your computer, software is updated all the time by the manufacturers, and it's just the same with DJ audio drivers and DJ software. Go and get the up-to-date versions of the software from the website, and again that's going to be on the instruction book, on the quick start guide that comes with your controller. Just log on to their site, find the most up-to-date versions, download those and use those in preference to the ones that are in the box. Using the most up-to-date software and drivers will give you the smoothest experience. The second thing is your hard disk drive. Now today's computers tend to have quite big hard disk drives. However, with the incoming solid state drives, the drives that don't have anything moving in them, actually hard disk drives have dipped down again. So this is actually more relevant than it was a couple of years ago. Have 20% more or less free on your hard drive. If you've rammed your computer with films to watch on a flight or whatever, and there's 5% left. Our iMac we saw a minute ago, we had to empty loads of old video off that recently because it just wasn't working right, because it only had a very small amount of hard disk space left. You need to have at least 20%. So just have a clean up, empty your trash, make sure you've got enough hard disk space. The third point is about the memory in your computer. Now, if you've got a very old computer, this is really good news because you generally don't have to upgrade your computer at all. If you're using a hand-me-down, you've had your laptop for 4 or 5 years, buy a little bit of extra RAM, buy a bit of extra memory for it, and it should be absolutely fine. Now, as a guide, 2 GB is probably the minimum that you want. 4 GB is perfect. If you're going to be really flash, go up to 8 GB, but my rule of thumb now would be 4 GB. And a little tip for Mac owners, if you don't want to spend $600 on getting an extra 16 gig for your computer, just go online to one of the big websites that sells generic memory. You'll get it for a sixth of that price. I don't know why Mac memory is so expensive, but it is. So our computer is now ready. The next set of things that you want to keep an eye on are just the things to check every time before starting a scratch session. And they are all things like Wi-Fi, turn it off, don't need it. Bluetooth, turn it off, don't need it. Scheduled tasks, notifications, all completely irrelevant to DJing, so turn them off. Things like any apps or processes running in the background that you don't need. You can tell where they are, by the way, on a Windows PC, that little band of little icons, and on a Mac, top right. Just right click on them, look at what they are. If you don't need them, turn them off. They're just going to take a bit of processing power away from your scratch software. It's things like that trip people up are really weird things like your screensaver might kick in the middle of your set, or your hard disk drive might be set to turn off if no one touches the keyboard for a while. There's all kinds of really helpful settings put there for day-to-day folk that you don't need for DJing, so just go and turn those things off as well. If you're on a PC, look in the power settings and set that to high performance on Windows 7 or Windows 8. There's another little tip there. And my final tip here is you can have more than one user on a PC, whether it's on a Windows PC or a Mac. You can have more than one user. So set up a separate user, set up a new user just for your DJing. And when you want to DJ, boot up and log in as that user, and then you can tweak so many of these things. You can say, I don't want this to load, I don't want that to load, I don't want this to happen. These are how I want my preferences set, to save you having to go through all these things time after time. You know, this stuff is all really dry, but it's all done now. Go away and get it all set up, because then we can look at the interesting stuff here, which is all the specific DJ controls that you need to set up right so that you can scratch properly. So the first of three big DJing settings that we have to get right is the crossfader curve. So what is the crossfader and what's the crossfader curve?
Okay, well let's start by looking at what the crossfader is. So the crossfader is this fader here, which you have on all controllers. And what this does is this fades smoothly between the two turntables. So if the fader is on this side, then you're hearing this deck. If the fader's on this side, then you're hearing this deck. So that's pretty easy to understand. You're blending between the two, and if you're somewhere in the middle, then you're hearing both. But for scratching, you want to be cutting with this fader, and if you'll remember in the last video, we had some of the arrows on the screen saying that using the crossfader to cut, and what that's doing is that was switching the sound on and off really quickly. So if the crossfader curve is set to blend but from there all the way to there, to go from 0 to full volume for this deck, then that's a long travel of the crossfader that has to happen before you get to full volume. What you actually need for scratching is you need the full volume to be at the shortest possible distance here.
So why? So just explain why that's important for scratching.
Well, it's actually for speed. It's so that you, you know, the smaller movement you need, the faster you can be, because you can get back to the beginning easy and you get that really sharp cutting sound that you need. So
you can turn the track on and off very, very easily, and presumably this means that you can do more intricate things far more efficiently.
Yeah, well I'll show you. I mean, if here on the Vestax VCI 380, we've got the crossfader curve control on the front, and I'm going to put it all the way to the smooth blend. And if I just open the fader a little bit, you can start to hear it, but it's quiet. If I want to hear it full volume, I have to go all the way over to here. If you hear there, you can hardly hear it. So if I want to do fast cutting, I have to move the fader all the way over to here to do it. It's possible, but it's not the most economic. If I move the crossfader curve all the way to the sharp curve, when does this give me the full volume? Well, let's have a look.
Wow, so that's almost instantaneous as soon as you move it a millimetre.
Yeah, it's just a couple of millimetres there. So now I've got my full sound there. And what this means is that for scratching, for the cutting technique that I was talking to you about, which you know, is a classic scratch technique, it means that you only have a very short distance to travel to get that. But also this means that if you've got this curve set properly, this opens up the possibility of more advanced techniques for you. So things like the crab scratch, for example, which is where you start to use more fingers, and you just open that fader very slightly and get a kind of a feathered, fluttery sound with the scratch.
Go on.
So you can hear that I was able to switch that on and off really quickly. It's sort of almost indefinable by the ear, but without that crossfader curve set to sharp, you're not going to be able to cut quickly and move into those advanced techniques.
Okay, so that's the Vestax VCI 380, quite a high-end DJ controller, and that has a curve knob on the front. Thought it might be a good idea to look at a couple more pieces of gear that have got a crossfader in them. And let's look at another DJ controller and the crossfader and crossfader curve. On this one is down here. This is the Terminal Mix 4, and on this one it's actually called...
They call it cut.
They call it cut. So when you've got it set to the on-off position as opposed to the blend position, they're actually calling it what it is used for in scratching.
And they call it long. The other version is long, which is the long fade. So
that's a Reloop Terminal Mix 4. Thank you, Steve. The other bit of gear I hiked out of our club setup here is this one. This is the, it's a Pioneer mixer. Pioneer mixers are all very similar. This is a very common club mixer, the DJM 850. And as with all Pioneer mixers, down the front here, there's a switch. And this has got 3 settings. So one of them is the kind of on-off, the cut setting. One of them is smooth.
Yeah, it's not obvious, but the one that's usually across means a smooth blend between them, and the one that looks like a mountain or a table is the one that's got the sharp up on each side.
And it's got one in the middle as well. You know, house DJs have their crossfaders quite often set to the complete opposite because they want to blend smoothly, but it's not the setting for scratching.
Yeah.
However, there's kind of a problem that isn't really a problem, isn't there?
Yeah, because some kind of mid to low priced controllers, including even some of the most popular ones, like we've got the S2 here, the Traktor S2, and the same with the S4, the Mixtrack Pro, for example, they don't have any way of changing the crossfader curve on the controller itself. So you may be thinking, well, how do I do that? Well, the good news is that all the major softwares have the ability to adjust the crossfader curve in the software settings themselves. Starting with Serato DJ, go to the setup pane here, head straight to mixer, and this is where you'll find the crossfader curve, and you've got the option for slow or fast. You want fast, and select linear. In Traktor, in the preferences pane, go to the mixer section. This is where your crossfader is, and you have that set to sharp. In Virtual DJ, here we're using Virtual DJ 8. Head over to the config wheel here. First of all, go to options and just make sure that Smart Scratch is set to no. And next, go to audio and make sure that down here the crossfader curve is set to scratch.
So let's move on to the second big thing to get right, which is the jog wheels. So crossfader one hand, jog wheels the other hand.
Yeah,
massively important.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is how you manipulate the audio. This is how you manipulate the music. It's very important.
The first thing to get clear here is that jog wheels on DJ controllers and on modern DJ equipment do 2 things, don't they? They don't only let you scratch.
No, they also have the nudge function, which allows you to slowly move backwards and forwards the waveform to help you with getting your mixes locked in bang on time. So they're 2 very different behaviours that are needed. One is, you need to be able to quickly thrust it back, and the other one you need to gently push it.
Fine adjustment. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at how it works on a typical DJ controller. So Steve, show us how you would nudge on one of those jog wheels.
Okay, so if I get this track playing, the outside of most jog wheels is what you use to nudge. So let's have a listen to how that sounds. So if I push it,
that's speeding up.
And if I pull it back,
that's slowing right down.
So that's how you would adjust it to help you with your mixing, to keep your mixing in time. If you want to scratch with it, then you use the center part of the jog wheel. And the way that works is, as soon as you touch it, then you have complete control over it, and you're moving the waveform around with your hand. Now, a really important setting that you need to have in place in order to be able to do that is the vinyl setting here. And on this controller here, it's called vinyl. Sometimes it's called scratch, but most controllers will have that setting somewhere on the controller. And if you don't have that engaged, all that happens is that you can't scratch with it. And the top of the jog wheel acts the same as the side. And I've actually had people write to me
I remember
and say, I'm trying to scratch, but I'm really struggling to move it backwards, and it won't move backwards. And
it'll get slower and slower and slower the quicker you go, but it'll just get
to... After a few emails, I worked out that the guy didn't have vinyl mode engaged, and of course, why would you know how to switch it on unless you know?
It's a completely easy mistake to make. A piece of vinyl will always go backwards if you grab it and go like that. So Why shouldn't the jog wheel?
Exactly.
Every single controller has that button on it. There isn't a controller that doesn't. The only ones that don't actually are there's some really, really cheap ones where the button it turns the whole jog wheel into that scratch mode, or the whole jog wheel into the nudge mode. So, but that's kind of like probably one controller in 100. Very nearly all of them have got this dual purpose.
And in the same way as we've just learnt with the crossfader curve, if you don't find that vinyl or scratch mode button on your controller, look in your software, it's in there as well.
Definitely. And actually that brings us on to another really good point. This is kind of like touch sensitive. This is there's no moving parts on there, and on most DJ controllers, but it's not always the way.
No.
On Pioneer DJ gear, like this unit here, just typical CDJ from a club, this is mechanical. It's got a mechanical feel to it, and it works in a different way. And
again, we've got out the Traktor Control S2. It's the same with the S4. This is mechanical, so this is actually a switch. It's a pressure sensitive switch, but it's only on or off, and you have to learn what pressure is required in order to be able to grab your audio there.
But that actually brings us nicely on to the next point about jog wheels, which is sensitivity, pressure. Yeah. Because those two controllers, for instance, there's no adjustment for any kind of sensitivity. You know, as Steve says, they're on or they're off. But with a lot of controllers, this is a good example actually, the Vestax, there's actually controls that allow you to work out exactly how hard you need to press down, even though there's nothing moving there, it's electrical, how hard you need to press in order for that scratch function to kick in.
Yeah.
So where are the controls on this one?
Well, this one is called the touch sensor adjustment here, and you have one for each of the two decks. And this would mean that if it's low, it would mean that you'd need, you know, quite a large part of your finger to be
or even a couple of fingers.
Yeah, to be in contact with that jog wheel in order for it to allow you to grab hold of it and to control it. If you have it to the really high sensitivity, that can cause you a problem, because it can literally almost mean a hair on your arm could actually trigger it to it's thinking that you're touching it. So there is a balance in between there, and for me, I quite often end up scratching where I'm using just my middle finger there, the pad of just my middle finger. So I like to have it so that as long as it goes into scratch mode when I'm like that, and it's not overly sensitive, which means that, you know, just by brushing against it, it grabs it, then that's a good setting.
On some controllers, those settings, these knobs here are on the back, so look on the back. Reloop tend to put them on the back, and again, like you say, Steve, check in your software.
Yeah.
There might be something in there.
Yeah.
And the other point about sensitivity is actually the mechanical sensitivity. How easy is it to spin the platter around? Again, we picked this one for a reason, because this controller has got all these things on it. Show the mechanical bit on that one, Steve.
Yeah, so with this one here, this has a screw in the middle here, which you can tighten or loosen how you want. And as you can see, I can push that around, I can pull it back, I've got complete manipulation over the sound. This side, we prepared this one earlier, this is tight, and I'm going to actually get some audio. You see that it just pretty much stops, and I'm really having to,
opposite to that.
Yeah, I'm really having to tug at it to get it to move. And if you do have that option on your controller, then the looser the better. It just gives you a much freer feel with the sound. So set it nice and loose.
So that's quite unusual actually. Normally you don't get that.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, I think some of the more controllers that don't give you all of these fancy different settings, there's something quite nice about that.
Simple.
It's like, that's your jog wheel, put it to scratch mode, now you're scratching with it. You don't have to worry about all these settings and be concerned that, like you said earlier on, you know, is the scratching sounding a bit weird because I haven't got the sensitivity of the jog wheel right now? If it sounds weird, you need more practice.
So a bit of a warning now about jog wheels. This comes from my digital software half of this equation. Jog wheels always work best with the software that came with the hardware. If you buy a piece of Traktor hardware, a piece of Native Instruments hardware, it is tuned to Traktor. If you try and use pretty much any other DJ controller with Traktor, it's going to be all right. It could be pretty good. It's never going to be as good as a Native Instruments controller, because Native Instruments make the Traktor software.
Yeah.
With Serato, if it's got Serato on the box and if it works with Serato software, that controller is going to work best with Serato. With Virtual DJ kind of works with everything. It tends to be pretty good, and with the better controllers, it can be very good.
Yeah.
But the rule is use what comes in the box unless you know what you're doing. You're going to save yourself a lot of heartache that way.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about using a controller not with its native software, or you're going to experiment with a different setup, have a look online, check out some other people's experiences of how tightly integrated the particular software and hardware might be, including some of our own videos where we've covered this, and it will help you make sure that you get the decision right before you spend any money.
But if you want to keep it simple, stick with what's in the box.
Yeah.
So the third and final thing you need to be aware of, the third and final DJ control that you just have to set before you start scratching, is called buffer size. And another word you might hear around this area is latency. They all mean the same thing. What they're referring to is how long it takes for something you do on your DJ controller to come out of your speakers. I'll give you an example of latency. Listen to my fingers. That was latency. The gap between what I did and what you heard. This is beta latency. It's a point now where you could probably work with it. But what you really want is this. So that's what you're aiming at. Every piece of DJ software has a slider in it that adjusts the latency, but the slider, here's the key thing, the slider is attempting to get your computer to get that sound out of the speakers as fast as possible. Whether it can do it or not depends upon all those dry settings we did in the computer section at the beginning here. That's why it's so important to give yourself a fighting chance and get the computer stuff set up right. Once you've done that, once you get into that fader, get it as low as possible. When you get it down to, and most computers now will get it really low, but when you get it too far, you'll start to hear glitches. You'll start to hear the audio breaking up, or maybe it will stop for a little bit of a second. And even worse, you might just find the buttons stop doing things. It kind of hangs up, and you really don't want that. So at that point, when you've experimented, and you experiment by doing as much as you can on your controller, when you've got it to the point where you're starting to hear things breaking up, just move that fader up a notch or two and practice again. And that's the best point for your particular hardware and software combination for really fast scratching. Next time, the one big mistake that practically all DJs make when they try and teach themselves to scratch.
Yeah, it's simple, you'll kick yourself, but it stops so many people from getting past go, really. They just think, oh, I can't do this, and they give up, and it's because they're making this one simple mistake, which we're going to share with you.
So that's not going to be you. You're going to get past go, and when you pass go, we're going to show you a classic scratch that you can use pretty much with all kinds of music and everywhere, from warehouse raves to weddings. You know, it's that universal.
Yeah.
It's a great way to start scratching, and we're going to give you everything you need, including all the sounds that you need. They're going to be a free download, not only the sounds you need to do this lesson, but the sounds that we've used throughout this series.
Yeah, and also we're going to teach you the right and wrong places in your music to use this scratching once you've learnt it, because sometimes less is more, and we're going to teach you the fundamentals of that as well.
Now, we've spoken to a lot of you in the comments on the previous video, and we're hoping to do so on this one. In the next video, it's even more crucial because we're going to ask for your feedback, and we'll be there to help you to get this mastered. So we're really looking forward to it. I want to make one thing really clear before we go though. You know, our reviews are watched by millions of people every year on YouTube. Our reviews are read by millions of people every year on Digital DJ Tips. And that's why the manufacturers make sure that when a new bit of gear comes out, we get it. And that's how I can tell you hand on heart that every piece of gear that's been released since we started reviewing them, that's got jog wheels, can be used to learn to scratch on, without exception.
Yeah, we even did a test, didn't we?
We did 50 DJ controllers we tested, and we found that apart from this little baby, and the Traktor Control S5 and S8 of course, you can learn to scratch on all of them. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you're struggling, take heart from the fact that it's not your DJ controller, it's not your software. You don't need to spend any more money to sort this out. You just need to get the technique right, or get something in your setup right that isn't currently quite there. So it's really important that you know that. We have tested it for you so you don't have to worry. And that's what the next lesson is about. The next lesson is about getting your technique right so that you can jump over any problems that you think you're having that you're blaming on the gear. Mm-hmm. Now, before we finish, we've got some freebies for you. Mm-hmm. Down underneath this video is the DJ Controllers Guide. If you're looking to upgrade your controller, or you haven't bought a DJ controller yet, everything in that guide is going to work fine for you. That's the first thing.
Yeah, and also from time to time I produce tracks, and a track that I produced with some guys called Ski Whiff with my scratching on it has just come out. It's just been released, and it's available for a free download, so you can get that below, and you can hear a bit of what I do when I'm not here in the studio with Phil or teaching people how to scratch.
If you're starting to think seriously about doing this, you're going to see where you could be going if you stick at it. So it's great. I liked it. Good track, Steve. Well done, son.
Thank you.
Finally, homework. We didn't give you any homework in the last lesson. You don't get homework on your first day at school, do you? But those days are over, folks. You've got to do something. What we'd like you to do, quite simply, is to check this video again. And everything we've said that you should check on your DJ controller, on your laptop, on your software, make sure you've done it, because it's pretty full on in the next video.
Yeah.
And if there's something not quite right, you're going to trip up. So if you have any questions or any problems getting that done, please use the feedback below. We're here to help. We'll answer every single one of your queries. We want to make sure you're set up.
There'll be no excuses in the next lesson.
No excuses
Do your
at all.
homework.
And we'll see you there. Thanks for watching.